From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. We begin in Venezuela, where President Nicolas Maduro has accused the United States of ordering the Colombian government to assassinate him.
You know that, don't you? They have given the order from the White House to kill Maduro. Not a hair will touch me because God protects me and protects the people of Venezuela. And they have given the oligarchy of Bogota the task of killing me.
President Maduro was speaking at the closing ceremony of the Workers' Congress, where trade unions and workers from various sectors presented proposals to help boost the economy.
I come to ask workers that all these proposals help inform that 2025 homeland plan for the working class and keep it alive. Once and for all, brothers and sisters, I believe that these guidelines hold the power of positive transformation, and the homeland plan must contain at least 3 components from the working class. Economic transformation is a priority.
Desde la clase obrera.
In Brazil, pre-election tensions are heating up once again, with just over 2 weeks to go for the runoff vote. In a tweet on Thursday, the deputy leader of the Workers' Party, Paulo Teixeira, said that a car reportedly driven by Bolsonaro supporters blocked the vehicle in which Fernando Haddad was traveling. He said federal police intervened and confiscated the driver's license. Haddad has recently been the target of a slew of false allegations. He blamed his opponent Bolsonaro for either planting or failing to condemn what he called fake news. A war of words ensued. Bolsonaro rejected Haddad's request to jointly sign a commitment against spreading fake news in the lead-up to the runoff. Bolsonaro then proceeded to call Haddad a scoundrel on Twitter. A famous capoeira master has been buried in Brazil after he was killed by supporters of Jair Bolsonaro. Mao de Katende was stabbed to death after he expressed his support for the Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad. One man was arrested in connection with his murder. Several artists denounced the murder and acts of violence apparently carried out by supporters of the far-right candidate.
We cannot reduce Brazil to this barbaric thing. The murder of Moado Katende is a sign that one shouldn't forcefully follow in the way that other people blindly think. It is backwards. It is fear of responsibility in civilization.
Jair Bolsonaro has skipped the first television debate before the October 20th runoff, and he will likely miss the next one. Bolsonaro's medical team said that he is still in recovery from being stabbed and was in no condition to participate in Thursday's debate. Bolsonaro had spent weeks in hospital after the September 6th stabbing. Bolsonaro's doctors say he will have another physical evaluation on October 18th, and a decision will be made then on whether he will be able to participate in the remaining debates. But he did manage to show up for his first public event since the first round of the election took place in Brazil. He spoke at a news conference in Rio de Janeiro after meeting with his party. He promised to unify the country if he wins the second round. However, in the past, Bolsonaro has made comments demeaning women and members of the black community.
We will unite Brazil, white and black, gays and heteros, fathers and sons, north and south, men and women. We'll unite our Brazil and pacify it.
Thousands of Brazilian youth have marched against the right-wing presidential candidate, saying that he only deepens divisions. The protesters in Sao Paulo chanted "Ele now" or "Not him," and carried placards saying "My country is not for sale." They oppose both Bolsonaro's misogynistic and homophobic views and his neoliberal economic program of cuts and privatization.
The election has divided the country amongst a population that after 4 elections is tired of a government in power and who wants radical change. This radical change is the far right. The far right defends Nazis, fascists, racists, homophobes, human rights ideals.
And Bolsonaro has also come in for stinging criticism from France's far-right leader of the National Rally, Marine Le Pen. On French TV, she was asked for her thoughts on the presidential candidate. She said, quote, "I do not see Mr. Bolsonaro as a far-right candidate. He says extreme things, unpleasant things, which are intolerable in France." Another social leader has been killed in Colombia, this time in the Putumayo region. The leader of a farming association, Otto Valenzuela, was shot dead allegedly in his home. His murder was reported immediately, but the police said they couldn't reach the area. The UN High Commission for Refugees in Colombia condemned his killing. 4 social leaders and 3 indigenous leaders have been murdered in less than 48 hours. Our correspondent Paula Fernandez tells us more.
Killings of social leaders continue in Colombia. 170 leaders have been murdered since the beginning of 2018. The last case has been reported in the department of Putumayo, where campesino leader Otto Valenzuela has been killed. He was a pioneer in the promotion of the replacement of illicit crops. There is outrage in the area since they say the community called authorities and they were told there were no police forces to come so far away. The victim was also a relevant figure in the organization of the community to fight for their rights. The UNCHR mission in Colombia has urged the government to take measures to protect social leaders in the country.
Farmers are supporting the national program for the substitution of illicit crops. However, it seems that the implementation of the program could be at risk.
Close to 80,000 families, part of the integral national program of substitution of illicit crops, are facing uncertainty. They say the government of Iván Duque hasn't paid attention to the program.
With the previous government, we discussed about the volunteer eradication of illicit crops by implementing the program in different departments and municipalities of the country. Since then, we have been in standby. We haven't had any conversation with the new government.
Former President Juan Manuel Santos said that the budget for this program was approved, but reality seems to be other.
For
2019, we need a budget of 2.5 billion Colombian pesos, but the government is assigning a small budget for this and also for the integral agricultural reform. We will need an additional amount for a land fund, but it is not planned yet.
Experts say the success of the substitution program is based on the amount of public funds. According to analyst Juan Carlos Garzón, it is difficult that this government will change their way of fighting drug trafficking.
In Colombia, people talk about drug policies, but the country does not really have one. We have a bunch of tools used independently. It will be a real challenge to create policies that work in the coming years.
Meanwhile, social organizations have reported 43 leaders working on the substitution of illicit crops program have been killed.
At least 12 people have died in landslides in the center of Colombia. Another 4 have been injured in the Marquetalia municipality. The landslides were caused by heavy rains that affected the area for the past 3 weeks. We'll take a short break now and we'll have more news in a minute. Welcome back. The chair of the Group of 20, or G20, is expressing concern about trade tensions brewing among countries. Nicolas de Jovenay, who's also Argentina's Treasury Minister, says the differences that persist must be resolved by members directly involved. He made the appeal at the IMF and World Bank annual meeting in Bali.
We recognize that we are right now facing trade tensions amongst members of the G20. So part of those tensions will have to be resolved by the members. The G20 can play a role in providing the ground for the discussion, but of course the difference that still persists should be resolved by the members which are directly involved in the tensions. Priorities of the Argentine. We agree that international trade is an important engine of growth, and we need to resolve tensions which can negatively affect market sentiment and increase financial volatility.
The construction of a new international airport in Mexico City has been the focus of community protests for years. Now, members of the transition team for the president-elect, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has been to listen to the affected residents.
The green landscape that surrounds the community of San Nicolás Tlaminca has not been the same for the last 2 years. The company that is building the capital's new international airport has turned the region into a landfill of toxic waste.
We are in a natural protected area of nearly 8,000 hectares. It was created in 2002, and it was clearly stated that in this area there should be no garbage dumps or mines.
People in the surrounding communities made clear to the transition team that they are opposed to this project. They say it has only brought devastation.
Lago sí, aeropuerto no! Lago sí, aeropuerto no!
Mines and quarries, many of them illegal, has caused irreversible damage to the environment. It has destroyed flora and fauna endemic to this central region of the country.
The environmental impact study for the airport said there will be 16 mines, but in the reality there are more than 160 authorized mines, plus all the illegal ones.
President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador promised to listen to all the parties involved in the building of the airport, a project which has already cost more than $13 billion.
They tell me there is no provision for an inquiry in the law. No, there isn't. But if you ask my opinion, I would like to have an inquiry.
The local communities have stood firm in saying that suspending construction is the only way out of this conflict, which could mar the government of López Obrador from the start.
This project is causing a catastrophe, not only for the environment, but also for us, because the people who live here are not taken into account in this project, except as cheap labor.
Businessmen, on the other hand, are defending what they say will be a pole of development for the country. As well as the airport itself, they are planning a network of toll roads connecting it with the Mexican capital, as well as hotels and shopping centers.
Bolivia's President Evo Morales has announced workers will receive a double bonus at the end of the year. Morales said economic growth can guarantee the double bonus that will be paid to public and private workers. The bonus is called Effort for Bolivia, a recognition to Bolivian workers. With just a few days to go until the Vatican declares Monsignor Oscar Romero a saint, social movements in El Salvador are demanding justice for his murder in 1980. They want those responsible to be brought to trial.
The Catholic faithful in El Salvador, along with human rights organizations, unions and citizens in general, are demanding that a judge in the capital speed up the criminal case against the murderers of Monsignor Romero.
We haven't been able to move forward with the case. We have talked to the judge about this, and he told us he has too much work.
Monsignor Romero was killed on March 24, 1980, as he celebrated Mass in the Church of Divine Providence in San Salvador. A truth commission set up under the peace agreements attributed the murder to death squads commanded by the now deceased Army Major Roberto D'Aubuisson.
There is an absence of justice. For 38 years, the state has neglected the victims of the armed conflict. And I say victims because Romero is the first of those victims of the savage repression carried out in the 70s and 80s.
3 days ahead of his canonization by Pope Francis in the Vatican, the plaintiffs say the sanctity of Romero will not be complete until those who took part in his murder are brought to justice.
The judge should issue a formal request for Interpol to locate and deport Captain Álvaro Saravia. That is one of the demands being made. Another is to take steps to reconstruct the crime in which Monsignor Romero was killed.
Although there is joy at the canonization of Monsignor Romero on October 14th, the impunity enjoyed by his murderers leaves an unpaid debt of justice and reparations.
In Chile, hundreds of students continue to march against the Safe Classroom Bill promoted by President Sebastián Piñera. Protesters say the proposed law seeks to expel all students who raise their voices against the government, and they see it as a copy of laws used by the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. Although the Senate has described the bill as unconstitutional, President Piñera is vowing to move forward with his proposal, even without support. Student movements say they will continue to demonstrate.
We want to say in a strong and clear voice that we will not allow this law to be passed, and we will go to the street to reject it whenever it is necessary, because it generates own integration, repression, evading the critical thinking of the classroom.
The Dominican Republic and the European Union have strengthened ties during a meeting in Santo Domingo. Dominican Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas and the Latin American and Caribbean External Action Director Hugo Sobral presided the forum. They stressed the relevance of cooperation between the two regions. During the meeting, they examined topics such as human rights plan, political parties law, and funds negotiations. Colombia has recovered 38 ancient artifacts. The pre-Columbian ceramic pottery was taken over a decade ago by a private collector in the United States. The FBI recovered the artifacts, which were illegally exported. The Colombian Institute of Anthropology and History will try to identify the pieces. We'll take another short break now. World News is next.
Telesur Documentaries presents an emblematic voyage.
Cuando llegó acá era Ernesto, que ahora es la Serra.
The journey when Ernesto became Che. Sunday, only on Telesur.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. In Uganda, the death toll has risen to 34 and is expected to go even higher after landslides swept across villages in the east. Landslides were triggered after a river burst its banks following heavy rainfall. Rescue teams are on the ground, but they are finding it difficult to access some affected areas because it's still very dangerous. The Bududa district is prone to landslides. Former South African Foreign Minister Pik Botha, who was a key figure during the transition from the apartheid era, has died at the age of 86. He became the global face of the country's white minority government in the last years of apartheid until its end in 1994. He then served as the Minister of Energy under the presidency of Nelson Mandela. According to his son, Botha died at home after an illness. North and South Korea are to hold high-level talks on Monday at the border village of Panmunjom. The latest talks will be led by the South's Unification Minister, Cho Myong-gong. This is a follow-up step to President Moon Jae-in and leader Kim Jong-un's recent summit. Ways to finalize and implement the Pyongyang agreements will be discussed at the upcoming meeting. At last month's summit, the Korean leaders agreed to resume economic cooperation. Kim also said he would invite international experts to watch the dismantling of a key missile site and close the main nuclear complex if the U.S. took similar action. And in the U.S., rescuers are still searching for survivors in the rubble of Florida's beachside communities. At least 6 are dead and over 1 million are without electricity as Hurricane Michael left a trail of destruction in Virginia and North Carolina. Major flooding and tornadoes have swept the area. In North Carolina alone, there were over 500,000 power outages on Thursday evening, although Michael has been downgraded to a tropical storm. The National Weather Service warns that floodwaters are extremely dangerous. A U.S. pastor who is on trial in Turkey on terror-related charges will know his fate at a court hearing on Friday. Washington says it remains hopeful of his release, although the State Department says it was unaware of any deal with the Turkish government. Andrew Brunson is charged with links to the movements of Fethullah and the PKK. The trial has intensified tensions between Turkey and the U.S., two NATO allies. If convicted, Brunson faces up to 35 years in jail. Young survivors in a small school in Yemen's Sada province remember their classmates who were killed in the air attack that hit a school bus in August. They returned to the Al-Falah school and took part in emergency drills. For many, the wounds are still quite fresh. Some attended classes in wheelchairs. They say they fear more attacks according to a recent UNICEF report. Nearly 500,000 children in Yemen dropped out of school since 2015 when the war began in the country.
We tell to the enemies that the blood of our classmates will not be in vain and that we avenge them by getting an education. We'll avenge them by learning. Thanks God, you saved me from this attack and from the hands of this terrible crime. We are sad that after losing our dearest classmates and worrying that the enemy will hit the school.
Fishermen in the Gaza Strip are struggling as Israel has reduced their fishing zone. Israeli forces have reduced the fishing zone to 3 miles. Authorities said the decision followed Palestinian attempts to attack police forces across the border. Traders in Gaza's fish market said prices have risen because supply cannot meet the demands of the 2 million people living in the enclave.
The fishing business is slow. I'm working hard with my kids to make ends meet. Altogether, there's 10 of us and I can barely earn a living. We go out to the sea, but every day we encounter problems. We're often targeted, so we don't have a good haul. It's an unbearable situation. We cannot continue to live like this.
A court in New York City has dropped part of the sexual assault case against Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. The decision comes after Lucia Evans accused Weinstein of forcing her to perform oral sex when she was 21. Evans' lawyer said the court's decision shows a mishandling of the case. She was one of the first women who spoke out against Weinstein, inspiring the Me Too movement.
Over 80 women have accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual violence. And if our justice system fails to hold him criminally accountable, then something is wrong with our justice system. The problem is with the system. It's not with the accusations, it's not with the accusers.
Thousands of sculptors are putting finishing touches to idols for the upcoming Hindu festival of Durga Puja. The sculptors of the goddess Durga will be central to the celebrations. The profession has long been male-dominated, but some women idol makers are defying tradition. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talis Your English, I am Srini Gray. Thank you for watching.